Thank you for watching the CEO Barbecue. My name is Antonio, and today I'm going to be looking for gold and copper in Côte d'Ivoire. Joining me on the barbecue today is Andrew Chubb, the CEO of Awale Resources. Before we get into the actual interview, though, I'd like to warn you that we have received monetary compensation for the production of this video from the company that's being interviewed. Please understand that this channel is a business that sells content producing services to companies, which means you cannot rely on this video for research, and you should treat this as an advertisement instead. Research is conducted by reading the company's official filings, which you can find on setterplus.ca. Please only watch this if you know what you're doing. This interview is intended only for experienced junior mining speculators, because mineral exploration, development, and mining is a very tough business where failure is the norm. This is going to be a conversation that is general and impersonal in nature, containing forward-looking statements. I am not a licensed financial advisor, so before continuing on, please talk to an investment advisor with a good long-term track record, because your capital is at risk, and I am neither a licensed financial advisor nor do I have a good long-term track record. However, I do personally own shares of this company, so I am to be considered biased. If you're not 100% sure you understand 100% of the disclaimers I just showed you and told you about, please go to the last section of this video and do not consume this content unless you fully understand and agree with everything said therein. That all said, Awale is listed as ERIC or ARIC on the TSX Ventures Exchange, where over the last 3 months, an average of about 110,000 shares have traded daily. Their 52-week high is 77 cents and their 52-week low is 38 cents. With a market cap of 45.5 million Canadian dollars and about 87.5 million shares outstanding, today this is a 52-cent stock. Now, I'm not doing a full company overview here today because Andrew and I have had multiple conversations over the last, over almost 2 years at this point, I think, Andrew. Yeah, something like that. And all of those interviews, by the way, they get combined in a playlist. It's called Awale Resources. It's on the channel, which it's going to be linked in the comments of this video. So go and watch those if you've missed them. But Andrew, really am looking forward to speaking with you today. So thank you for sitting down with me.
Yeah, me as well, Antonio. It's been a while, so there's a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine, of course. And it has been a while since we've done a proper barbecue, if you will. A proper Barbie, is it? I saw you briefly at PDAC with not much time to catch up, so I really am looking forward to the conversation. Let's maybe start off high level here, though, because you've done a lot of work in the meantime, and after all this work over the past couple of months, has anything fundamentally changed for Awale, either in your interpretation of the geology or anything else?
No, I think the drilling's really just confirmed the thesis we've got, I suppose, on our models and our the way we do our exploration. And I think we've just built confidence in the targets we've kept drilling on. We've built confidence in those targets, and also starting to look at some new targets, and as well as some strike extension on targets like BBM as well.
We're going to hopefully talk about everything in here, because there's some interesting stuff happening with BBM and then Lando and your 100% stuff that you think are kind of linked, which will be interesting. And well, actually, and this may sound weird, but what is Awale right now? I know I've asked you this question before, but there's Charger that brought a lot of eyeballs to the story. There's BBM again, there's Lando, there's a bunch of other targets on the JV ground, like Sceptre East that we haven't talked a lot about, and then you have your own 100% stuff, long strike from BBM. So it's a lot. And so what is it? Is this a high grade gold story because of Charger? Is it a bulk tonnage story because of BBM? Is it a discovery story because of your own stuff? What is ERIC?
Well, it is all of the above. We have now advanced targets in BBM and Charger, and Empire now as well is advancing again. We brought that back into play, and then we're doing sort of more discovery drilling. So I would call that resource development drilling. So trying to understand what the extensions of those things are. Do they continue down plunge, things like that. And then we've done discovery drilling on other targets, such as Fremen in the 100% ground, Lando in the joint venture ground, and also along strike from or closer within a couple of kilometres of BBM. We've done some scout drilling as well, and I for me, I just call them like satellite pits. So it's kind of low hanging fruit that might not fall into like a BBM resource or pit in the end, but it's very close. And anything from 50,000 ounces plus, you would potentially put a small pit on and add to what BBM might be. So it's a combination of all those things. So we're advancing the discoveries that we've made, but we're still doing discovery drilling alongside that as well. And so from the, I guess, the joint venture perspective, we're still exploring to make, with the view that Newmont is still very interested, and that we're looking to put together resources on multiple targets that makes the project. We view the project as a mining camp. So we've never looked at it as an individual a target. We always knew that we had multiple targets, and they all had potential to be coming into some kind of central processing facility. So within the discoveries that we have made, they're all within a roughly 15-kilometre or less radius of a central point. So not, and some of them even will be even closer to that central point, but none of them are far away. So we view it like a mining camp, and there are plenty of examples of those sorts of things globally. The biggest one that I've actually worked on is the St Ives Gold Camp in Western Australia, in Kambalda, and that's a large operation that's been, I don't know how many ounces it is now, but it's well north of 10 to 15 million ounces, and it's been mined in multiple pits and underground operations that come into a central processing facility. Closer to home, things like closer to home, meaning Côte d'Ivoire home, the Sigila operation for Fortuna is a similar sort of operation where they've got multiple deposits that are coming into a central processing facility.
As an Aussie who runs a Canadian company and lives in Europe, and a company operates in Africa, close to home can get confusing. So I'm glad you clarified. But essentially, well, then I shouldn't think about Charger or BBM or whatever. I should think Odienné, essentially. That's what you're saying. Odienné is the name of the project, and really is one project. If it moves forward, kind of as a whole.
Yeah, that's right. So
okay.
That's the idea.
Let's talk about some of the recent hits, though, that you've had with Charger, with this last news release here. It's from today, basically just now, actually. So I haven't had proper time to go through it. I've scanned through it. There's a few things that I highlight. Specifically, you've discovered a new parallel mineralized zone, which is 50 meters 50 meters away from the high-grade core, or the high-grade corridor from last year's news release. But the grade and the width profile here looks quite different and variable to how come, what's going on, what is this new thing?
Well, I guess it's still a breccia, and but we've it looks to be a parallel zone, and so it's the first hole into that zone, and so we're always going to get sort of width and grade variability at Charger. We know this now. So we're going to get ranges from 50 to let's say 50 meters true width in Charger, down to sometimes it'll come down, and if it is that hinge and limb model, you would say that those hinge zones, they're going to be the broader zones, and the limb zones are going to be narrower. And so so that's the first hole in that has hit that outside of that expected mineralization. So we've I think we've got a fairly good handle on that main zone now. So, of those 9 holes, one of them is a hole extension of the 83, which was the very high grade hole that we drilled last year. But all those others have intercepted the mineralization at the target depth for that drill hole. So we've got a fairly good handle on where that main zone is at Charger, and we always expected, that once we started to think about that fold model, that there is potential parallel zones in the area as well. So that's the first hole that we're sort of calling that parallel zone. And when we extended drill hole 83, we've intercepted, I mean, the intervals of the mineralization are short, but we've hit mineralization in the extension of that drill hole 83 as well. So we are finding parallel zones. So there is that potential that will continue to grow as we do more drilling at Charger. Beyond that at Charger, I think it's important, like in this news release, we've tried to bring in the idea that we're understanding that the alteration at Charger has effectively demagnetized. So the rocks, the surrounding alteration or the surrounding rocks have got magnetite, and so there's quite a strong mag response, and that drops off rapidly as you come into that breccia zone. And so if you look at the mag in that zone, we've got 5 demag zones in the mag. So they're like cells, if you like, in the mag picture, where the mag response is low, and we haven't explored those other cells as yet. But there is upside of finding other mineralized zones within those as well. So that's sort of the blue sky upside potential at Charger as well, which we've introduced in this news release.
Essentially what I'm thinking about here, and I just opened it to have a look again, but you've got 83, which is the big discovery hole, 57 meters of 26 grams, 88, 29 meters of 20 grams, 100 is our hole 100 is 59 meters, 14.7 grams. Is that coming back? Are we going to see those grades again? And if you had to guess, where would they be?
Look, I think now, so with this drill program, so the 83, 88, 100, and I think it was 85, all intercepted the same breccia. Some, like the 85 was slightly lower grade, but got a broader width of the breccia, but 188 were similar to 83. And so we looked at that. That's when the fold model started to come in, and we looked at that as we needed to target that relative level. So the first 2 holes that we drilled, which were 118 and 120 at Charger, were we targeted those specifically at the roughly or close to the same RL, or how far it is below surface as 83, and those 2 holes were successful. So 120 is about, like in plan view, 120 is maybe 20 to 30 meters to the northeast of 83, 88, 100, which are all around about 40 to 50 meters apart, if you like, and got nice good mineralization. So we got 26 meters at 12 in that hole, and there's some higher grades within that as well. So there's I think 6 meters at 42 grams within that interval as well. And then 118 is drilled strike southwest, and it's 70 or 80 meters away. So it's just shown that there is this broad intercepted breccia, like so, it was 95 meters of mineralization. And it's the angle of that is slightly oblique. So the true width of that one's probably around 50 or 60 meters.
Mm.
So it sorry, it's hit it quite square on. So the true width is less, and the other holes are more oblique. But so the true width is around that 50 to 60 meters, but it's which is consistent with 83 and those others. So it's showing that we've got a cigar shape, which is what we've talked about before, that has got that broad width of mineralization there over that strike length. So that's sort of pushing it out to over 100 meters of strike between those holes. Somewhere 120 odd meters, I guess, and so that was sort of step one, which we were very happy with, and that also gave us more confidence in that northeast corridor. So then there's a paucity of drilling that's actually hit target above that. So based on that model, so all those other holes will be reported 121, 136, 34, 35, 100. They're drilled above, and they've all hit the breccia target there as well, with varying widths of mineralization. So you'd interpret them as more in sort of potentially limb zones, or the breccia is slightly thinner there, but it's just helped confirm that northeast strike. And the other thing about those upper holes is that there is a lot more polymetallic mineralization. Getting into some geology now, but there's a lot. The fill in the breccia, a lot of it is actually like massive sulfide. A high percentage of pyrite, chalcopyrite, pyrrhotite in the breccia, and then sort of below 100 odd meters vertical, that sort of drops down, and we've got a lot less sulfide. It's sort of on average, say 1 to 3%, and then there's that higher grade gold in the holes like 83, 100, 120, 118, and then we're going okay. So we came back and we stepped back, roughly 50 to 70 meters underneath those series of holes. So we've got 4 holes, which you can see on the long section, which are down below that, and they have hit significant widths of breccia mineralization in those. So potentially we're actually sort of picking up on another one of those cigars, 70 odd meters vertically below those 83, 88 holes. And so when we're waiting the results, but hopefully we see some high grades within those as well, and then that sort of proves the thesis that it's a bit like a ladder. So you've got your northeast corridor, and you've got good mineralization in between, but not quite as thick, and sometimes not quite as high a grade. But then you've got another cigar, and then then these things tend to repeat themselves. So then we would hope as we step down, we get another one. So then it becomes like a ladder within that structural corridor.
Mm.
So that's what's exciting to us about Chode.
When someone asks you what's the thesis here, you just tell them it's an endless cigar ladder. That's something I can wrap my head around.
Yeah. And
is this
a glass of whiskey in between? I don't know.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. So so there's that other mineralization that keeps holding it together in between. So there's the gold's always there, and we always think about things that is this economic? Is it something that's actually makes sense economically? And if you've got something like that, it definitely makes sense economically from an underground mining perspective.
Those cigars, though, the breccias here, is that a structural or lithological brecciation here and does that matter in the first place?
Well, the model at the moment is folding, so each one of those is a hinge. So hinge limb sort of situation that you're hitting in there. So that's the model, and it seems to be holding together at this stage.
So, well, essentially, this new zone is then structurally connected with the previous one. It's not just a parallel zone that occurs in isolation.
They're connected to each other
through that fold hinge model.
Along that, yeah. So through that hinge model and along that, and those folds are within that northeast trending corridor.
Okay, so that's also something that I was wondering about, that whether that's still the dominant model, but it holds together. That's good to know. You also talk about a new magnetite-destructive low magnetic zone theory here. Do all of the intercepts you have confirm it, or is it more of a working thesis at this stage?
Yeah, no, pretty much. I think pretty much all of them, except when we get in that massive sulfide zone, when you're getting pyrrhotite, there is a mag response there. But compared to the greater picture, like you're talking centimeter scale to tens of meters of scale, or even hundreds of meters of scale. So yes, so you get we've actually taken readings on the core, magnetic susceptibility readings on the core. So you get a strong mag response, and then pretty much when you hit the boundary of the breccia, the mag response drops off. It's like a knife edge. So and so then when you do mag surveys over the top of that, that boundary becomes blurred because of the distance between data points, if you like, and all those. So the scale is much bigger, but there's definitely a demag zone that you can see in the mag around that northeast charger trend, and then there are those other cells that we haven't tested, and they all mostly sit within the broader gold in auger anomaly that we've got at charger.
Well, so you better understand the geometry now. You better understand the structural controls and the geochemistry. And initially, or judging by the presentation, you still believe that this is Odienné as a whole is an IOCG intrusive related system. Is that still the thesis now that you better understand the geometry and structural controls at charger? Or could this be kind of a modified orogenic breccia system or anything?
No, it's still the particularly chart, like all the mineralization has a magmatic signature to it, and so in the long run, because we are sitting on the major structure is actually a belt basin margin, which is why we call BBM, and so those basin rocks are often excellent source rocks as well in an orogenic system. So there's, it seems possible or likely that there is a combination of both, but which is great from a plumbing system, and B, a mineralization story. And so, but yeah, so it's definitely intrusion related, but there might be some orogenic or metamorphic fluids associated with it as well. And these are big circulating fluid systems. So you've got, and then you get a combination, we've got a combination of the two. But between everything that we've discovered so far, we do tie them together with a magmatic part of their mineralization. So they've all got similar mineralogy and similar styles of alteration. So we're quite comfortable in tying them all together and saying that the mineralization event or the fluid flow events are coeval or at the same time.
And well, that's interesting because as you just explained, mineralization does vary vertically here. So the deeper breccia zone has more visible gold, and then the upper part is more polymetallic. And you also touched upon this earlier, but how do the sulfide textures and vein orientations evolve with depth here? Like, is there vertical zonation in alteration assemblages as well that could still support that thesis?
No, no. The alteration is quite consistent as we get deeper. It's just the sulfides drop off below roughly 100 meters, and so um, I um, I don't have, or we don't have a thesis at the moment on exactly why that is. It's probably temperature and pressure related, um, but yeah. So we don't have an absolute thesis on that at the moment.
Is it looking continuous enough to support a resource model sometime in the near future here, though?
I think charges something like charger because of the high grade and sort of nuggety nature. So you can drill a hole in one spot and maybe the grades are averaging, the average grade over the interval might be 5 or 7 grams, and then you drill, you drill a hole that's only 20 meters away and the grades are way higher. So charge is going to, in the end, for resource sort of work, will require a significant amount of drilling. But what we are comfortable with is those. Now we're comfortable with the structural control and that we can target drill holes to hit mineralization, and that came in from this program. So in all, I think we drilled. I think so it's 13 or 14 holes. I can't remember off the top of my head. But all those holes have hit the breccia at target, except for that one 137, which is hit a different zone. So that's just given us confidence in that we can plan step down holes, so we can step below where we've been drilling and hit that target breccia, within 5 to 20 meters of our target target zone.
So no resource on charger anytime soon. Like, I assume you're going to want to do BBM first, and we'll talk about that too.
Yeah, so that's right. It will to get that statistical confidence because of the nuggety, like the visible gold nuggety nature. You tend to require a lot more holes to give that statistical confidence for an estimation.
Right. Because, I wanted to ask you about a volumetric model on charger as well, or anything 3D basically, because you have that 3D thing for BBM, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that something
So,
you're going to do for
yeah, look,
charger?
we're like based on what we've got now, we can build wireframes of the breccia and where we think it is. That's for sure. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I wanted to ask you about met work and how the metallurgy is on charger. When do you want to do some met work on charger?
Oh, I think that'll come in the second half of this year. We'll start doing some initial met. Look, yeah. So in that top 100 meters, the petrography that we've done shows that even with the sulfides, you see gold in fractures in the sulfide. So it's not in there. So the thought is most of it is free gold. And below that 100 meters, there's high confidence that is mostly free gold. So again, not very stressed about the metallurgy at Charger, but that work does need to be done.
So essentially, what you're talking about here is like, if you look at the breccia matrix, you're not seeing any refractory elements or anything like that in the core.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
absolutely not. Yeah.
If this was Australia, you'd be able to provide kind of an exploration target size for charger, and you're Australian. So I'll just ask you, how big could this thing get?
So look, if it's an underground opportunity that keeps going, I mean, if you took it, let's say you take it down to 500 meters, maybe the exploration target's 500,000 plus.
Hmm.
500,000 to 700,000 ounces, something like that, down to 400 or 500 meters at the moment, based on what we know today. But that may, if we expand those parallel zones and so forth, that could easily grow even more.
So what is left then for you to do here? I mean, that would be the follow up here as well. Is it expand those parallel zones, or how do you grow it? What more work do you do here?
Well, do more drilling. So the drilling we've got planned to start at the end of this month. We'll actually start at Charger,
Hmm.
and so we'll step down from where we are at Charger. So that's what's planned right now.
Hmm. So, well, yeah, but well, drilling, of course, but where do you go? Do you go deeper? Do you step out more? Where do you go from here on out?
At the moment, we're going to go deeper. Yeah.
How deep do you want to chase it?
Um, uh, I think we've got confidence to step out quite far. But what we'll do is, instead of, if you think about offensive holes horizontally, we would drill a vertical sort of fence. So we'll step down 100, step down 100,
Okay.
and see what that looks like
Hmm.
in a series of holes. So that's still getting quite deep. If the target's down to, if the target depth is like 400 meters, then you're talking about probably roughly 800 odd meter holes starting to come into play, or plus 800-meter holes.
So from this past program, this news release, is that the last one of Charger? Do you have more Charger
So
assays
there's
coming?
those four deeper holes that we came back
Oh,
in
that's
and
right.
drilled. So we once we drilled those higher up holes that we've reported in this release, and those two that are on the same RL as 83, and built that confidence in our sort of structural model. That's when we actually came back subsequently and drilled those last four holes. So we don't have the results for those yet. But like I said, they're roughly a 70 odd meter step down from that DD83 level.
Right. When are those coming out again?
I think we'll be, early May sometime. I think
Okay.
um, we should have those results.
But you say at the end of this month you're going to be restarting drilling essentially. What is it? Isn't it rainy season now?
Yeah. So, well, not yet. The rainy season starts in earnest in July.
Mhm.
And if you're diamond drilling on a single target, the logistics are easy, or easier. Um, so yeah, that's okay. But we can drill sort of 1.5 to 2,000 meters a month with a diamond drill. So yeah, there's if starting in May and drilling into June, July, there's plenty of time for the next program charter.
How's assay turnaround now? I remember last year it was slower than I had wished. Is it going faster now?
Um, yeah, it's been good. But it really, yeah, we had some one program had some significant delays, but um, uh, it's still on that sort of 4 to 6 week turnaround for multi-element results.
Right. But so well, you're going to have assays for Charger in May as well as in June from that new program, then I assume. So kind of throughout the summer, you're going to have more data
Yeah,
on
so
Charger.
yeah, so that in yeah, so around July, sometime July into August, we should start seeing results from the program, which will start in early May.
Okay.
So yeah, by the time you drill the holes, log them, cut them, sample them, send them off. Yeah. So from start of drilling to actually getting the samples off and doing it, it's probably more like, you know, eight 8 to 10 weeks before the results from when you start drilling.
And what you did, the lab finally came, I think. So you have your lab on site now. Is it operational?
The PPB lab
Yeah.
is operational now. but it's not accredited or anything like that. And it's not really designed to be sampling diamond core. So you need a fine sample. So if you're RC drilling, you can use it. But we're using that as a guide, not as something that we're reporting to market because it's not accredited.
Okay. Is it working?
So it's an internal guide. Yeah, so it is, and so where it comes into, so for us, where it comes into its own is really in the greenfields exploration space. So allowing you to hone in on targets more rapidly and not have to wait for results from the lab.
Okay. Did you greenfield? Does that mean you're specifically your 100% stuff, or because I'm just thinking who paid for this lab? I never asked you that.
Awale, it's an Awale owned system. So we'll be predominantly using it on the 100% exploration. And, we're in discussion with Newmont whether they would like to use it too. But, there would be a chargeback because there is a cost per sample for the analysis. But yeah, so there'd be a chargeback to Newmont for using that facility. But it's open there for them, and we've talked to them about it, and we just need to confirm whether they want to use it as well.
Well, supply demand. If they want to use it, you got to charge them ×5 because it's the only lab that's close there. So we might as well make some money on it. Yeah. Let's talk about BBM and how well that's been progressing, because I know time is of the essence here for you, and I want to be respectful of that. But BBM has grown nicely. It's now what, a 1.3 kilometers by 300 meters deep by about 30 meters wide, depending on how you want to look at it or where. Depending on the average grade here, which is 1.2, 1.3 grams per ton, is it looking like a Newmont-sized project to you already, or is there more work to be done?
Do BBM alone?
Yeah.
No, BBM alone is not a Newmont scale right now. It's open down plunge, and like I said, we've started doing some scout drilling along strike as well. But that sort of 1 kilometer, scale that you were talking about just before, with the grade that it is, that's not Newmont scale. But they're looking at, again, they're looking at the project or the joint venture permits, with that camp scale idea as well. So that's what the exploration's continuing with.
That's exactly where I wanted to go with this. Is it when you talk about, because I think the minimum threshold for the JV is what, 2 million ounces, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, so there's meant to be delivery of a minimum of 2 million as part of that initial earning. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's 2 million on the JV permits. Yes. So if it's a combination of BBM, and this forward looking, of course, but BBM, Charger, Lando, and everything else kind of combined, it has to be a minimum of 2 million ounces. That's what they want to see. Yeah,
for that's the I guess the goal they set on the earning.
Right. Yeah. And we'll touch upon that again. I'll be back to Newmont here, but maybe going back to thinking about what is Awale question earlier. What is BBM? I mean, that might be a fitting question here too, because it does trend from kind of gold dominant to copper dominant along strike. Does that make it harder to model, or do you feel confident in understanding what BBM is?
No, it doesn't make it harder to model at all. It is related to the B, like, if you like, it's the BBM shear, and so it's quite easy to chase a long strike, and where we get the geochemical anomalism, and where we saw in the IP, we can chase that structure quite confidently. So that's sort of the that's greenfield or brownfields exploration upside, if you like, closer to BBM, but it's the same structure that continues up through Bobber and Fett, which is another couple of gold anomalies that we've got about halfway between BBM and Lando, and it continues all the way up to Lando, that same structure. And so it's actually, and there are subsidiary structures around that. So there is a core structure to it, and then there are subsidiary structures. And so BBM is a subsidiary structure to that main structure just on the, I guess, the north to northeast side. And, it turns and goes much more in a north-south kind of direction. And so BBM is on the southeast or southwest or western side of that structure, but it follows all along. It's the same trend between Fremen to BBM all the way up to Lando, and it does go beyond there. That same structure you can trace in the regional mag all the way out into Guinea and beyond. Like we actually trace it all the way into Western Mali.
Do you have permits north of Lando too, right?
Yeah, that's right. So it's a little bit northwest of Lando, right, where our next permit is. Yeah.
And you think that's all structurally connected? That's what you're saying. So Lando connects to BBM, connects to Fremen.
It is. There's a very big intrusion that sits right next to or northwest of Lando. So when you get things like that, that structure will sort of bifurcate and then come back. It bifurcates around that and then comes back together on the other side and keeps going. So it's that we see that permit as a really interesting target area, and are looking forward to getting in there.
Is there any other evidence that the three, or more of the three, are kind of genetically linked? I mean, alteration, orientation, dip, displacement, anything else that tells you this is the same thing?
Yeah. So like I said, those geochemical fingerprints are the same, and that's the key, is the geochem fingerprint. So the mineralization, that gold, copper, molybdenum mineralization is evident in everywhere we go. And like I say, it's kind of on a spectrum, but they're always there. So sometimes there's very little, and sometimes there's more, depending on which end of the spectrum you're on. So it is that geochemical and alteration fingerprint in each of those, that each of our discoveries and target zones that helps to tell us that. And there are other trace elements as well that are part of that, which I guess we view as intellectual property at the moment. But they tie all that in as tie all those in together as well. And so the way that each of those discoveries are, it's like there is local geology that influences what they look like. So there's a local flavor to each of those, depending on what the local geology is. But the fluids, it's the same fluids in all of them that are it's the same mineralizing event in each one of them that tells us that it's a big plumbing system that we're on.
What happens if and when you prove that it's the same thing, but there's mineralization on your side of the permit? So on the 100% Awale stuff, like if I think you have some assays coming from Fremen sometime also soon. What happens if you make a discovery there? Do you spin it out? Does Newmont want part of it? Because if it's going to be mined, these things, and if they're connected structurally, they're going to have to be mined together and kind of processed at the same thing, right? So again, forward looking here, but what happens?
Well, yeah, if it is within what's deemed to be, if the grade of discoveries outside that are deemed to be within a truckable distance, it doesn't have to be operated by Newmont. It could be operated by somebody else, and then it effectively it's toll treated at a mill there, or or maybe they get if Newmont's operating, maybe they buy those, so that then it becomes a transaction. But if it's beyond a truckable distance, we're looking for something that's standalone and would have its own life and operation. So it all depends on that truckable distance, and depending on grade, that truckable distance could be over 30, 30 to 50. 50 kilometers is getting far in reality, but it's not insurmountable as long as the deposit's the right grade and it makes economic sense to truck it that distance to a mill.
But who's going to get that value? That potential value is what I'm thinking here. Like,
I think
are we
Awale
as
gets that.
Awale shareholders?
Awale gets that potential value because we own 100%. So that's the value's for Awale, not for anyone else.
Because I also think that you're in a way different situation now than the company was when the JV was initially negotiated, or initially started. So if there would be another deal, I suppose it would also just look different. I would hope it would look different, really.
It'd be a separate. It's things in the 100% Awale ground would be a separate deal to what the joint venture deal is, and so it's either a sale of that asset, or if it's not a sale and you're undertaking the mine and toll treating it there, or it's a standalone. I mean, there are three options there.
Right. Well, this is typically where I'd ask you, why not spin it out? Why not do something on it now? I suppose you would then tell me, oh, it's too early. Let's talk about it in a couple of months. When would the right time be for a deal or anything to be moving on the 100% stuff?
Well, look, that's a good question. But I at the moment, we're progressing through getting towards the end of the joint venture, and we're just sort of embarking on the 100% ground. So I'm not sure that the timing is exactly right now. But yeah, I mean, it's a possibility in the future that you could consider a spin out and with a distribution of shares to current Awale shareholders in a new co, and potentially give that a different life depending on where the joint venture is. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts there, I suppose, in that in when you make a decision to spin out or keep it together.
Right. Okay. Well, I kind of let BBM to the side here for a second, but what exactly have you done at BBM? What new things are you seeing? I don't think you've done met work on it as of yet, but I suppose you're going to want to do some.
Yeah, look, we are doing some initial. There are some initial met studies being done. We don't have results of those yet. It's taking longer than expected, but So we do BBM for sure because it is gold and copper. There needs to be an understanding of how you would process that, and particularly where the gold sits. How much of the gold goes to a sulfide concentrate, or how much of the gold actually would get processed on site, and they are important things for BBM. But I've always said that it's dominantly chalcopyrite. And if you look at other examples of chalcopyrite ores, they tend to be quite friendly from a met perspective, creating a chalcopyrite float where all the pyrite and other sulfides fall to the bottom, and the chalcopyrite floats off and goes into a copper concentrate. Chalcopyrite tends to be pretty nice from that perspective. So I've never been too distressed about whether you can create a copper concentrate from something like BBM.
Chalco is nice looking too, right? It makes you happy when you look at the core.
I
looked at some of the
pretty. Yeah.
I looked at some of the core during PDC, which I thought was great. And we shot some video of that. There's that video if people want to see it on the channel again. How much more drilling here at BBM before you come out with a resource?
Well, I mean, again, there needs to be a lot of drilling. We're on 100-meter centers now, which has given us that initial confidence in what the in that continuity of mineralization and what the plunge is on that mineralization as well. And so we'll definitely be looking at that from a resource perspective, and how much more drilling needs to be done along with the metallurgy. The metallurgy that we're doing now is just initial metallurgy to give us the idea. So it's only from a very small number of drill holes. So when you're thinking about estimations, you need to have metallurgy, done across the entire system, not just a few select points within it. You actually need to have representative, is the word, representative metallurgy across the entire mineralized zone. So, and we're definitely looking at doing all those things in the ensuing 12 months.
When I ask how much drilling, I'm also thinking about where do you go from here, because BBM's open at depth right now as well, but you're already at 300 meters, and the grades are around that level, right? I think on the higher end you're about 2 grams. Does growth at depth become a challenge here given the grade profile?
There are some indications in the drilling that when you're at the footwall zone, and so I can't remember what the included intercepts are. Unfortunately, right now we have so many intercepts, it's hard to actually remember them all. But when you're at that footwall zone, there are zones that range between sort of 5 and 15 meters that are over those intervals. They're more than 4 grams per ton. As well, and then even within those, we're starting with the infill drilling that we did. We started to see we'll get a lot more hits that were above 5 grams and up to 20 grams as well. So, we haven't discounted the idea that there might be underground potential at BBM as well. So the drilling that we did with in mind that it is steep, the mineralization. So the drilling we did was keeping in mind what an open pit might look like down to 300 to 350 meters, depending on what the widths, the mineralized widths were. So that was the thesis behind limiting that last drill program to those depths. But now we have a really good handle on what that plunge is, which is roughly 45 degrees to the northwest. And so in part of our future drilling plan is really stepping out down that plunge and seeing what it looks like. We do definitely need to drill holes down plunge on that as well. But what's drilling going to look like? It is still Newmont funding as well. So those resource or the hurdles they have are higher. So we do still need to be doing, as we did this program, a significant amount of discovery drilling, like we've undertaken at Lando. And so there will be sort of a combination of resource development drilling and resource drilling as we move forward, as well as discovery drilling.
And that's happening. When is that starting? So right after Charger, like you start the new drilling at Charger in early May, and then on the back of that BBM, or how do you see that happening?
Yeah. So I think more of that will come after wet season.
Okay, right.
So Q4.
Okay, Q4. You've also done some work at Lando finally, which was I was actually excited about it myself. What's that looking like? Porphyry, skarn, hybrid? What are you thinking?
Well, it's a bit more like it is a bit more like BBM, like a shear hosted sort of mineralization. There are some we have intercepted some small intrusion in the drilling as well, and there appears to be mineralization associated with those as well. But that's the same as BBM. But the host rocks, there is a host rock geology change. So BBM's on the north side of that structure, and that big structure is a big domain boundary. So BBM is in a sedimentary domain, and then Lando is in a volcanic and volcaniclastic domain. So there's basalts and sort of intermediate volcanics as well as sediments in that pile. So you see, we're seeing a combination of basalt sediments and some intrusive rocks at Lando. So, but again, they're just that's the host and that local geology. It's still looks like to be a structural control, a strong structural control on the mineralization. So, in effect, it if it's going to come together as something, it'll look more like BBM than say a charger. Just that the host rocks will be different.
How deep did you drill there?
Oh, I think the deepest hole was probably 300 to 350 meters in the diamond, and then the RC fences, I think the average depth is about 90 meters.
Oh, that's right, because you started with the RC and then you
so
went
it's
back with the diamond.
combo. There's RC and diamond. No, so in the country that is, so we had previously drilled a couple of holes, which we reported back in a while ago. I can't remember. It's, late 2023, early 2023, I think, something like that, or late 2022, which got mineralization. So, but where those holes are drilled, the topography is more aggressive. So we drilled some more diamond holes in those zones where the topography is more aggressive, and where it's a bit flatter, we drilled RC fences.
Right.
And so those diamond holes we did push deeper as well, just to understand the system and potentially hit mineralization at depth.
When are those assays coming out?
I think Lando's going to be last cab off the rank, because it's where we finished. So, I think Lando, we're talking probably June sometime.
Okay. Let's maybe recap, because we said a lot here in terms of what you have coming, because you've done a whole lot of drilling. What is it, 18,000 meters?
Yeah, roughly 18,000.
And
yeah, that's
so
across. That's including the Fremen drilling that we did.
Yeah.
So roughly 16,000 meters on the JV and a bit over 2,000 meters on the Fremen type.
So what is that going to look like chronologically? Let's kind of sum it up, everything that we've said so far. What do you have coming up in terms of news? And again, chronologically from now throughout the summer.
Yeah, so there's Empire to come, Fremen, BBM satellites, Lando, and then back to the drilling we're about to start again at Charger.
And that's going to go, what's kind of the cadence that you expect to have news on? Because you've had.
Oh, I think it's pretty much a fortnightly cadence on that. So, so there'll be a news release on the 6 holes we drilled at Charger. There'll be a news release on what was it, 22 or something holes that we drilled at Fremen, and then the BBM satellites, there were 4 fences for. Can't remember how many holes now, I'm sorry, but there were 4 scout drill fences that we drilled, within sort of roughly 1 kilometre to 3 kilometres of the BBM sort of zone that we've been drilling with, at that closest spacing, or the BBM discovery.
Well, I did have questions about Empire, but since that's coming soon, let's maybe put that away for another episode. And I know you almost have to run here, so we've talked about this before as well. But now that you know more about the project, about Odienné as a whole, I mean, you've drilled all these different targets here. What would be the closest comparison from a more advanced project perspective? I know you gave me at the beginning, you gave me a comparison how that might work. Um, kind of technically or in reality, but from a geological perspective, is there a mine that you envision this be coming into, or what's the closest comparison?
Um, yeah, so I mean, that's difficult, to be honest. I think like as a direct comparison as another mine, I, I've, I've never been able to find an absolute direct comparison. Um, but as a camp, I mean, Segula, like locally, is something similar. But where, like locally, I don't know of anything that is exactly like where we are. There are there is similarities in the mineralization characteristics between um, where we are and say the Lulo-Guntoko complex and some of the deposits in Senegal, that you know, like Diamba that Fortuna is actually currently drilling. So that was a Chesser, the Australian company Chesser that was there, and you know, they're hematite breccias in the mineralization. But a direct comparison to what we have is difficult to put a finger on, because I think that's been the whole thing, is we sort of stuck our neck out at looking somewhere that is very different. And so we have this, you know, I think it is this sort of hybrid intrusion related model, and and finding something that's exactly the same or very similar to what we have is difficult, because you know, we've got breccias at Charger, we've got shear zone hosted things at BBM, and Lando, and along that BBM structure, and then you know, and then things like um, Sceptre, which is you know, hosted in an intrusion, um, lots of disseminated mineralization with probably some internal structural controls on some higher grade mineralization there as well. So, you know, it's difficult to just put, you know, hang your hat on one thing with the different local styles of the mineralization we've got. But these provinces like Carias, like that's the same thing. So if you look at Antas or Crystalino or these things, they're actually all quite different, but they're all you know, within, I think Carias, the Carias province is about 300 or 400 kilometers in strike length,
Mm,
and all along there you just get different styles of gold and copper mineralization
mm.
in
You,
that province.
you've brought up Scepter, so I'm going to ask, when am I getting that kilometer deep hole at Scepter East, Andrew?
One day,
One day in
one day.
2025?
Look, I would like to think so. And I can, like, that's the thing. I guess, you know, uh, within the joint venture perspective, you know, we have there is a motivation from the Awale side to drill at Scepter, and but it's such a big target area, potentially, you know, just a couple of deep holes don't cut it. But you know, it's just never quite fit into the budget and the goals of you know, the milestones that we're looking at within the project. But so it's still there, and you know, the thing is that I guess um, it's a very, you know, it is a large tonnage kind of target, and the grades that we're getting back at the moment I guess are low, and so maybe the motivation from Newmont is less, but we believe there's potential, you know, within that very big area to find zones within that you know, maybe are more similar to like BBM, And so that's something that we motivate towards, but we haven't been able to fit into the budget at this stage.
Well, I know Andrew Smith also wants to see that hole, and maybe Andrew and I are gonna gang up and maybe option it out of you and then start a new company just on Sceptre East alone. That would be fun.
Yeah.
What is Newmont saying about all of this that we've talked about here today? Again, they want to see 2 million ounces, as you mentioned, across the package. Are they telling you anything about whether they want to move forward or not? I know you talk to their team a lot. You guys work together. What are they really saying about all this?
Well, I think they're still excited about what we've been talking about today, which is the fact that we are on a large scale, a big plumbing system, and so that keeps them interested, that there is that Newmont scale potential at the project. And so I think that they're still interested in the potential to build more discoveries and build something that is of that Newmont scale potential. I don't think 2 million ounces is a Newmont, operation. They are looking for much larger operations than 2 million ounces. 2 million ounces producing 200,000 ounces per annum. That's not something of Newmont scale if you look at what their projects are globally. If you look at their projects globally, it's more like a 500,000 ounce per annum operation that really they are targeting. So and so they remain interested in that there is a belief that Odienné has potential for that 500,000 per ounce, 500,000 ounces per annum scale project. That's sort of where we are with them, and that's what we'll continue to explore for. But so right now we're getting indications that we're moving towards that 2 million target. Which is absolutely everyone knows that 2 million ounces, when you mix in high grades from things like Charger, the global grade should be pretty decent. And so that's, a mid-tier sort of property that we're moving towards now. So, we really are an advanced explorer. We're not an early stage explorer anymore. And, probably if we weren't, potentially the project would be looked at slightly differently if the joint venture part of the project, if we weren't still looking for that 5 million ounce project that Newmont's got their eyes on.
How are you finding managing the relationship with Newmont here now that you're moving from an early stage explorer to an advanced explorer? Are you getting more of an upper hand? Are they still, trying stuff, or like, what does that look like?
Look, I think as any project advances in a joint venture, the discussions become different about what the milestones are. But we would still really like to put our hat on a 5 million ounce province or project in West Africa. So we still like the idea that we're spending money on trying to prove that 5 million ounce potential.
Well, it's also, again, interesting that given that you're in a better position, in my opinion, now you've got your own money. How much money do you have left? Again, you paid for the lab, you've done some work on Fremen, so that's all coming out of your own treasury. How much money do you have left?
Yeah, so we still have, roughly, we've got just under $9 million in treasury.
Okay. How far are you thinking that gets you now that you know more about the project?
Oh, look, it's definitely it's around about a year, or well, depending on how quickly we make discoveries and how much drilling we do. It's at least another year. Um, because of the Newmont joint venture, that's handy as well because we do get a management fee and that reduces our that reduces our G&A significantly. But it's at least a year, depending on how rapidly we end up drilling. But on the other hand, as a company, we actually need to start. We do need to start thinking about the fact that we are, within the next 12 months, probably approaching the end of that earning period, and looking at co-funding on the joint venture as well on the future part of the project. So that's a factor that's definitely on our minds as well.
When's that going to have to happen if it happened?
It all depends on how rapidly we spend money. So we're sitting at roughly, I think we've spent $11 million today,
right,
of Newmont's money on the project, US dollars.
Out of a total, what's a total earning again? 15?
15.
15, that's right. Okay. Well, if you go with the business model that I told you about the lab, you might as well slow it down a little bit. Why I'm asking this is because I'm thinking, do you ramp up marketing from here on out now that you have a better understanding again of the district as a thing? Because again, looking at the share price over the last 6 months, it hasn't really gone anywhere, even though you've advanced the project. So I'm thinking, how do you change that? Like, obviously, marketing might be part of that, but how do you change it? Is marketing part of it? How are you thinking about the share price now?
Yeah, I know. It looked at it. That is a definite frustration for us. And I guess one factor is, as we approach the end of the Newmont earning, if they're staying in, then I think there should, that is showing that there's a belief that we're moving towards a Newmont scale project, and people should start to see it that way, rather than thinking about, oh, they're only looking for 2 million ounces, because that's what we've talked about as part of the joint venture deal. So it goes beyond that. If at some stage they start to back out or they back out, then, as we discussed before, Awale is sitting on a mid-tier, a mid-tier project, which is, attractive to any junior company, and we should get revalued based on that as well. So either or, I think Awale sits in a fairly good position because our current capitalization is not reflecting either of those things.
So the answer is not, I'm going to do more marketing. The answer is you're going to try and do more work that reflects the value in the market, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is there. I mean, we can do more. We do a lot. We do a lot of. We work pretty hard on our marketing anyway, and making sure that people know who we are and what we're doing. I think we just keep making sure Awale knows who we are, what the project is, and what the opportunity is. And I think that's one of the biggest opportunities is, Newmont scale project, 5 million plus ounces, which we've got, for a small company, a significant portion of, like roughly 25% of. And then, if it's not there, then we've got, a buyback options and things like that to have 100% of a mid-tier scale project. So there's a revaluation there as well.
There's also
and so if you look at other 2 million ounce sort of companies that are at an explorer stage, their valuations are 4 or 5 times higher than Awale.
Yeah, I think there's also maybe some aftermath still being worked through from the financing, which was about a year ago. That might not necessarily be true. It's kind of a personal feeling that I have. part of dealing with that could also be insider buying. I've seen your new IR and business development person, Artem. He's buying in the open, or he was buying in the open market. Um, I suppose it's also challenging. And you said you're going to have chronologically news throughout the summer. So is there willingness and ability for insiders to be supporting the share price in the open market?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, my if if I could buy more shares, I would. And the thing is that I effectively put all my money into Awale 2 years ago, and so there is all that backstory there from my perspective in that there were a lot of difficulties with Awale, and so I guess I held on, and so did Andrew Smith and others just held on, and so when we made that change, for me, a significant most of the money that I was actually owed and hadn't been paid for more than 12 months, I just sunk back into a wallet. And so, since then it's been, on a personal level, it's been trying to rebuild to where I was before. So if I had more money to put in, that's where I would be as well. But so, I think it's that I can talk about that from a personal level. What other insiders decide to do, that's up to them as well. I can't.
Your wife must be happy. I mean, you've not only does she get to send you off to Africa a couple of times a year and then to Canada a couple of times a year as well. You also put all of her money in a junior Explorco. That's a smart move.
Yeah. It's yeah.
Andrew, this been good.
But look, there's always been that, like, that's always been there. As this is, it is a fantastic project, and at one day there'll be a mine in the Odienné district. How that actually happens and the scale of that operation, that's the only unknown part of it today. And the fact is that, on the joint venture, we just keep drilling successful holes. Like we have an excellent technical team, and we have got absolutely fantastic exploration success. And like if you include all the drilling that we've done on BBM today, like those 50 holes on that BBM zone, the discovery cost, if you look at it, the discovery cost is low. We're talking a couple of dollars. And we are good at what we do. Like we've got a really strong geology team, and so we'll just keep making more discoveries, drilling good holes, and I think that's the only way to keep producing those results and getting people to realize that. I'm not quite sure how many times we have to do that, because we've already done it multiple times, but we'll just keep doing it. And that success at the drill bit is what's going to really create the biggest value in Awale in the future. And so we'll just keep doing that, and doing all our marketing and doing all those things along the side. But we have a fantastic success rate with the drill, and it's frustrating that it's not recognised. It is frustrating for everyone within the Awale group that success is not reflected at the moment. But I think it will be. It'll come. I'm sure it'll come.
And I'm right there hoping with you that it's going to come. And this has been a good conversation. There's a couple of positives that you've ran me through here that you've showed me. What keeps you up at night, though? What is still something that you worry about, or a risk or something? I know I ask you this every time, but I'm hoping for some new stuff.
Yeah, and like before, so I think I probably alluded to it. So we're we're getting to, we are progressing now. We are really progressing towards the end of the joint venture. So what does that look like? That's something that I think about a lot. And what you brought up, does the company do a spin out? There are there is still and always has been institutional interest in Awale, and there's been other strategics like other producing companies interest in Awale, and so how do we get the most value out of those sort of things as well? So now that the project is advanced, it's being a geologist and thinking about geology and all those sorts of things, which has really been the main driver for me up to now. There's a lot of other things with Awale that we need to look at and consider carefully about how we can create value for Awale out of those other ideas and other things that are going on. So
As a geologist,
they're the sort of things that I don't that probably keep me awake at night, is thinking about all those sorts of things.
as a geologist thinking about geology, I'd never expect to hear that. But you're right. Let's keep it. Let's work toward wrapping up here. What am I forgetting to ask you here? What did you come here hoping to talk about that I've not brought up?
No, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head, and the biggest one has been it has become clear to me over over time and talking to people that the concept that it is of a mining camp is probably hasn't been clear to a lot of people, and that's the concept. Is it's not all about charger, it's not all about BBM. It's each of those parts makes a greater whole, and that's a really important part of the Awale story, I think.
A greater whole, either with the W in front or without the W in front. It works either way.
Yeah, in that one, it's the W, but yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this, Andrew. I'm looking forward to hopefully catching up again soon. But I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Antonio. Always good talking.
And as always, thanks to everyone for watching Resource Talks. I have a couple of more things to say, though. The fact that this company was interviewed here today does not mean that they're necessarily a good or a bad company. I'm not here to endorse nor attack anyone. I am simply here to ask some questions. If you find that I have failed in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, which will happen as I'm not an experienced interviewer, please let me know, and I will try to correct that mistake in a future interview. As mentioned at the beginning, please understand that mineral exploration and development is an extremely risky business. Losing money is the norm and should be the expectation. This is a very complex sector, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles, including company-specific factors like geology, financing ability, and many others, really, as well as particles that are outside of the company's control, like geopolitics, macroeconomics, commodity prices, and many more, most of which are nearly impossible to fully understand. Moreover, these companies that typically get interviewed on Resource Talks are in the pre-revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for the financing of their operations, which could result in shareholder dilution. Furthermore, as a general rule of thumb, you'll be better off understanding that all company communications online, albeit this interview or their website and their presentation and their social media accounts, or even the social media accounts which you thought were your friends and then told you about a stock, everything really that these companies do is intended as marketing. And although I do not make buy or sell recommendations because there is a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, many out there do. And you should be aware of that inherent bias, and you should be careful out there. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company-specific content to approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it is biased in at least some shape or form, because there will always be a bias. Again, albeit clear or not. So always ask yourself what the incentive of your counterparty is and never rely on them regardless of their incentives, but instead double check if what they're saying is true, again, by using setterplus.ca. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I am not saying this to make jokes or laugh with myself. I just simply do not have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits. So I should, under no circumstances, be considered an authority on anything. Again, although this may sound amusing to you, believe me, it is not amusing and it is not intended as a joke. I'm simply pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I do or say. Unfortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. The CEOs do not possess any superior knowledge, and they cannot know about what will go up, what will go down, or what will go in circles. Some people even believe that to be rule number one on Wall Street. Nobody really knows. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success, again, given that we're talking about high-risk activities where most of the times it ends in failure. Also, unfortunately, try as I may, I won't always catch all red flags or all challenges with the companies. So even if I did ask a few tough questions in here, don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving parts, and I am conflicted given the nature of this business. Therefore, I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, and you cannot hold me responsible for any losses or damages stemming from the way you decide to use this interview. Viewers, listeners, and readers acknowledge and agree that the information presented herein did not constitute a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any security or investment or to participate in any trading strategy. Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business strictly disclaim any and all liability for losses and or damages, whether direct, indirect, special, or consequential, or other consequences, however so caused, arising out of any use or reproduction of the content published by Resource Talks or any decision made or action taken in reliance upon it. By consuming this content, all consumers vow to release Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business from all claims, proceedings, or consequences. This is all to say, I know it's a lot of lawyer talk, but this is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should do your own research. Once again, social media is meant for entertainment. It is setterplus.ca where you do your research. That's where you'll find the company's official filings, and I encourage you to read and analyze the Management Information Circular, the financial statements, the Management Discussion and Analysis, and whenever available, the NI 43-101 technical documents. If you don't understand everything in those documents, the chances of you losing money are even higher than they normally are in this space. And as mentioned earlier, the chances of even the best analysts in this sector losing money are extremely high, since this is venture capital and it is not for everybody. I'll leave you with one of Charlie Munger's quotes, which I wish I had listened to more often earlier on, which says, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it."